Welcome to Humans of Reliability podcast. I'm Sylvain Kalache, Head of Developer Relations at Rootly and your host for today. In today's episode, we dive deep into the transformative role of AI-driven operation in healthcare reliability with our special guest, Ryan Lockard, with the VP of Platform Engineering and AI Enablement at CVS Health. Let's dive in. Opinions expressed by Ryan Lockard in this podcast are his own views and do not necessarily reflect the views of CVS Health or its affiliates. Can you tell us the role that AI-driven operation play in your reliability strategy at CVS Health?
This is a great question. I want to talk about this in a few different ways. One, there is like where I think the industry is going. And there's a lot of vendors out there that have various offerings, and there are a lot of groups tinkering with actual agentic work in the reliability space, where they've got SRE agents. We've thought about like Ollie, the observability agent, agents that have like your context of your monitoring, your synthetics. They can do RCAs. They can do optimization analysis on your systems, chase anomalies, like that issue that happens every Tuesday in the middle of the night that you never have time to like look at, right? Like these things. So I think that that's like I think that's where things are going, doing all the work of it, having an agent run an incident, having it solve an incident. Again, lots of groups I think are playing around with this stuff. And I think that people are also finding out that the barrier to creating agents is actually quite low compared to where people thought it was if you were like outside the AI space. You hear about this and you hear about agents, and then you get involved and you find out it's like 100 line of code, and then you just throw it at the LLM, right? That's like that's like the near future. Where we are specifically, I'll say that, there's a bunch of very specific things that we use LLMs for. And one is troubleshooting. So within health tech, you will inevitably bump up against a legacy system somewhere. And it doesn't matter if you are a startup, you're cutting edge or not, at some point you will integrate with like the hospital system, right? And it happens less and less these days. But that said, there is a higher chance than elsewhere that there's going to be some thing that you're like, this is very old. I don't know how this works. Some consulting group built this ages ago, things like that. An LLM at your disposal, you can say, hey, I didn't build this. I don't know what it is. We're in the middle of an incident. The site is hard down. I think it's got something to do with networking. Can you help me out? Feed it details, right? And so it gives that like extra muscle, I think, for folks that are actually on the line trying to help out, right? So just general troubleshooting for sure. The other piece is sticking with incident management in general. There is this, I'll say, very small innocuous unlock with meeting transcription notes. So, whatever meeting software you're using, they all have this like AI transcription nowadays. And before, when it wasn't free, there'd be the role of like the incident manager. Okay, I'm taking the notes, I'm keeping things updating, I'm posting to Slack, I'm letting people know what's going on. And you never would have paid for like note-taking software. But now that it's kind of free, there's this really interesting thing that happens where you jump into an incident call and it's all right there for you. The things they've tried, like what's going on, which frankly is very helpful because as somebody who has to like be aware, you can show up and the gravitational weight of your title will make people like, pay, oh my God, there's an executive on the call. Let's and things like that, right? But now you get all of that. It's free, it's great. So it's very small and it seems like it wouldn't matter, but it's actually been pretty huge. And then I would say there's another piece of like from where we are right now, like to be specific, there is just general AI enablement, right? One of the things that we're trying to do is unlock the AI for developers everywhere. And this includes like the infrastructure engineers, the platform engineers, SREs, like everybody, right? They're AI enhanced, like everybody else, using the various AI IDEs that are out there. You it's things like, hey, help me write this script that I would have done, right? This like proactive stuff, like when you're not in in an instant call. Help me write this Terraform module. I need a custom plugin that's going to do something. There's hey, let's rewrite some old code. Can you optimize something? There's this proactive piece plays in there. And I think all of that weaves into the reliability strategy. There's a lot of enhanced tools that people have begun to play with that we're starting to see some gains in.
A lot of great stuff in there. Ryan, I'd like to ask you to go a little deeper. One point I've never heard. I think it's also quite interesting because somewhat specific to your industries. There are other industries that are also still dealing with legacy system. But can you tell us a little bit how these LLM tools are giving, as you said, a little bit helping people interact with legacy system? How is this possible?
Sure. So you could have something that is wildly out of date. You could have something where it's like, hey, this is SQL 2012. And it doesn't have anything that I'm used to. How can I get X, Y, and Z done? And it can really help, do that. Essentially, it gets to be, to varying degrees of success, sort of like your free consultant that, has already left the company. So these things were built, a while ago. They can be hard to keep up to date. They're often neglected. And then they get to this state where they're unusable, and that's why there's an incident in the first place. So yeah, when you're troubleshooting, it really is helpful to talk through. And look, we don't use this everywhere, but it does come up, and you're like, I have no idea how this thing interacts with our network policy. Let me talk to the LLM and see if it can help me sort of rubber duck and figure that out.
So LLMs are making waves in every industry, including healthcare. But do you see them actually improving system reliability and operational efficiency? Or do you think they are more about introducing more hype and risk than benefit?
I love this question. As somebody who's at least I try to be very AI first, I think they're absolutely improving system reliability and operational efficiency. There's a lot of ways to think about this, though. So if you're not playing around with the frontier models in your platform offering, I would say you're absolutely missing out. But there is this hidden value that I don't see underscored often with the natural language interface. So hypothetically, you could have an MCP server in front of your cloud infrastructure, and then you can just ask it questions in a very natural way. You don't have to remember what screens to go through, right? So it can be a thing of again, to reuse the incident example, we're in the middle of an incident. Show me all of the events that are probably germane in the past 24 hours for these 2 VMs, because they're the ones that are having the problem. And then you get that response back. You don't have to remember how to search for the stuff and line things up. And were there any policy changes in the past week? You can go from thought to output that much quicker, which improves operational efficiency, and then in a reactive way improves reliability. You recover quicker because you've gotten to the solution faster. I think we are at a stage where you can really leverage it, and you start to see this with the very senior engineers that know how to describe the types of problems very well. You really start to see this and they can fly and cruise with it. That is, from a reactive standpoint, I think when I think about reliability and the reliability space, I say that you've got SREs that are sort of digital EMTs. They're all firefighters. You have to be good in a crisis, but that's still very reactive, which you have to be good at. But from a proactive standpoint, we see things wow, AI is documenting my code very well. It's drawing diagrams I never would have taken time to draw. We had to rewrite a performance testing framework because it was written in a language the team wasn't comfortable with. That translation stuff, right? And so that naturally, proactively improves the reliability because you're just enhancing the tools available to you in a much more effective way.
Cool. So for those who don't know what an MCP server is, obviously it's kind of all over the internet, but I think some people are still confused with it or don't know what it is. It's a protocol that's been developed by Entropic, which stands for Model Context Protocol. And it basically works as middleware between tools and models in a way to assist models in discovering and using tools that are at their disposal for these sources. And so what Ryan described is that, let's say you want to gather information from your cloud provider through a model. The model should be able somewhat, let's mention AWS as an example, which has like a massive amount of tool and catalogs and endpoint. It can be like very confusing and hard for the LLM to know exactly what you mean, which tool, which services, etc. And so MCP will bridge the gap between what human will ask through a prompt and AWS. And actually, it's very fun, Ryan, what you describe with this like senior engineer like flying through this incident by like prompting models, or maybe they are just speaking to them through voice, which remind me of this vibe coding. So it could be like almost like it's not vibe coding, but it's incident vibing, right?
Sure.
Like,
right. Yeah.
And also very cool. I'd be very interested. Obviously, we won't have time today, but to discuss how AI is generating diagram. Actually, at Rootly, we have a Rootly AI lab. It's Philo-led initiative where we work with industry professionals and research students, and we built a prototype that's actually available on GitHub, and it's open source, where we take post-mortem incident report and a code base, and we built a tool that will ingest this two pieces of information, and it's LLM based, and out of this it will generate a markdown diagram highlighting diagram way like what went wrong during the incident. So as you said, I think it opens up possibilities of doing things that we just didn't have the time to do, and for team it's a huge productivity booster, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like there's a secondary value that is harder to quantify, which is like it's a quality improver, because again, these are things that in some areas the team was just never going to be able to prioritize to do, and now they can. Is that increased productivity, or is that a better quality product? That's a discussion to be had. But yeah, you get a lot of this like free things with this that we're starting to see the benefits of.
So in healthcare, do you rely on like any reliability metric or methods beyond the usual uptime and latency figure that everybody else is using?
I want to say like we're special, but we're not that special. I saw that you had Justin Rioch on the show, and I talked to him a little while ago about like DORA, and that's I think that the DORA framework is great. You've got lead time, deployment frequency, change failure, fair deployment recovery time. I mean, essentially, we're just like everybody else, but I think you take that framework, and it is a very good compass or map to go hunt down, okay, well, like what's going on here? Because if you trace back your reliability issues, I mean, yeah, sometimes it's just misconfigured infrastructure. Hopefully it's that, because that's very easy. But then other times it turns out that like your actual operating model is contributing to the reliability issues, and things with like how the SDLC is managed. And if folks aren't going small batch rapid release, if they're not following standard industry like CI/CD practices, like everything's still applicable within the majority of health tech, I'd say.
As an engineering leader, like how do you go about nurturing a culture that prioritizes this reliability that's so important?
Yeah. So I think there's an easy answer and there's a harder answer to this one. So the easy answer is on call, right? You're like, oh, make devs on call, problem solved. That's a little flippant. But really what you're shifting towards here is ownership. And if you play this out, and if you follow an older, outdated model of, the team that is managing the software in production is not the team that built it, you get these things where there's an issue, there's an incident, the person wakes up in the middle of the night, they look at the monitoring, they look at the synthetics, they hope a reboot fixes it. They do a reboot, it fixed it. All right, I'll tell the team, and in the morning, I hope they fix it so I don't have to do it again the next day, right? I think like there's probably still a few groups out there that follow that. But the more modern progressive models is if you are responsible for the code and there's an issue, not only are you much more versed in like what is going on, you're incentivized to fix that yourself the next day because it's going to wake you up again in the middle of the night. So I think that's really where that comes from of prioritizing reliability through ownership. But again, that's also the easy answer. I think that there is this much more harder answer of there's a lot of education that has to be done. And what I mean by that is really, you can be in peacetime or wartime with reliability. If things are very stable and they've been stable for a while, you're in peacetime. If you're in wartime, it's actually much easier to prioritize reliability because folks will be like, what's going on here? We're having outages daily. I'll give you whatever funding you need. Just fix this thing, please, right? It's really when you're in that peacetime that things are like, well, what have you done for me lately? I don't know. System seems stable today. What do you mean we're approaching a limit? I don't feel that way. There's things like that. So you have to go through really talking through like the trade-offs, and they are trade-offs. There's reasons to ignore this stuff on purpose by design. You may, need speed to market to matter, and therefore you're incurring tech debt on purpose, right? That's like an active decision you can make. But at the same time, when you're past those decisions and it's time to refactor or to migrate because we're approaching things, it's really about educating the stakeholders, and they may be non-technical folks at the time, and you have to walk through like, look, here's where we're at, here's the data that I have, my gut says X, Y, and Z, the data says the same. You're just talking through that, and again, that's a lot harder to make a cultural shift when you have to go that route.
It is. Coming back to what you said about older models and times or organization which are segregating or like have a separation with the people building the software and the ones supporting it. And the fact that people on call may not have this knowledge and then it's hard for them to fix it. Do you believe that in some ways with LLM, AI-assisted coding, where writing code is less about reasoning through the code, but more about accepting or reviewing LLM suggestion, like developers are kind of losing touch with their code base and are becoming less familiar. And so when an incident happens, they may not be as comfortable with the code base. It might be harder to troubleshoot. Do you think it's something that's
Sure. So I think that is like a natural framing of like, okay, the AI models are outputting a very high volume of code. And if I'm vibe coding, I'm just click accepting. And do I even know what's going on anymore? Yeah, I think that's a very normal conclusion to come to. I think there are ways to do this appropriately, where if you focus on test-driven development, if you focus on the appropriate patterns, if you have the right rules files, if you have, other AI reviewing things as a first pass, if you're aware of what's going on, I think like it's still possible to maintain what's going on here, especially because you can also be very conversational. And there's things like, hey, summarize the work that's been done here. And there's other ways to like get insights still. I think that people not reviewing code and shipping it to prod is a problem whether or not you're using AI, right?
Yeah, that's what people call vibe coding. I mean, I think ultimately before LLM, people would copy-paste a solution from the internet Stack Overflow, right, without really understanding it. So it's not really something new, but I think it's, like the AI-assisted coding is accelerating it. And I think what's cool with these tools is that, yes, they help developers to write code faster. And obviously, they won't be as familiar if they wrote it, but that's also why you are going faster in the first place. So there is a balance to strike. But then SREs can also use AI to help them troubleshoot incidents faster, right? So the tool that kind of causes the problem can also be the solution, or part of the solution in some way, right?
Yeah. And I think it's key to underscore that you still want to follow like small batch rapid release patterns. Right. So even if you're shipping a lot of code, like you want to be going frequently and iterating, and your production synthetics are the best tests if everything is working anyway. So
speaking of moving fast and breaking things, that's one of the favorite motto of the tech industry. But in healthcare, you can't really afford to break things. So how do you reconcile the pressure to iterate quickly with the need for rock solid?
I know Zuckerberg made this quote kind of popular, and I think I'd like to challenge it a little bit. I think that in the beginning, when this first came out, it made sense to challenge like, hey, don't wait, right? You don't have to wait. You guys are waiting, and that's the problem. I think now that we've had a few decades with continuous delivery, it's really, I would say, if you move slow, you will break things because you will increase the batch size. And, I said earlier, we're special, but we're not that special. I think in the areas of health tech that aren't federally regulated, you still move very quickly. You still can follow proper patterns. And so essentially you get in and begin to look at batch sizes, use that DORA compass from earlier, figure out what's going on. I'll say when I first got here, the business unit that I was in, that we were doing around 500 deployments across the ecosystem annually. And like within 2 years, within the same ecosystem, it's north of 2,000. And one of the things that was done was we really looked at all the red tape. And it was like, it's annoying for me to do deployments, so I'm going to bundle them because it's tough. But there really is like a direct correlation into incidents and issues from like waiting on your batch size. The complexity is high. And so when something goes wrong, it's harder to actually troubleshoot because you're not sure exactly what's wrong. You go smaller and you're like, well, I only changed that one thing. So if it's broken, it's with that one thing, and I think that applies. And so because you're reducing complexity, you're reducing risk, you do it to go small, you end up going fast as a side effect. And I think that now more than ever, AI is going to enable that's moving small and moving quickly. I think that because of the volume of code that's going to be shipped in general, things like progressive deployment patterns where you can canary are probably going to become very critical, if not already, because it's, hey, I have this, it's vetted, everything's passed. All right, let's put our toe in the water in production, 1% traffic, see it okay, hey, it looks great, keep going. I can't see, there's probably other patterns, but you really need this like instantaneous production grade feedback loop with where we're headed.
And why do you believe AI is making this even more important than ever?
I think that AI is absolutely a force multiplier within engineering. And so you have very senior engineers that can just handle a wider span, and they can just go, and they can drain the backlog. And that will be a problem if we follow outdated deployment patterns. You'll have these bottlenecks, and it'll be terrible. There'll be issues. It'll be risky. So, the actual SDLC has to keep up all the way through to production.
Spoke a lot about senior talent on this episode. What do you think is up for the one entering, like for junior talent? Like, what the future looks for them? What type of path can they take to build up their career and become professional?
Yeah. So I've got kids. I think about this a lot, and I think that it's actually a great time to play around with this stuff. I'll tell you, top to bottom, everywhere, everybody in their career that's working with AI, they are excited. And it's like, hey, this is fun. And for some people who are maybe a little burnt out, they're like, hey, coding's fun again. This is great, right? And then for people that are just getting in, that have dreams of what they want to do, they feel that much closer to it. It's been a great learning tool all around. And I think that, we're just starting to scratch the surface with what these things can do and like learn more. And there's so much that you can get done with like proper prompt engineering, I think is a very underrated skill. And we're not really even learning that much about how to do this like currently. And I think that'll become a focus soon too. And you'll just see like people, young and old and in their career getting accelerated, having a good time. Very positive on where this is going.
On the topic of technique for prompting, a shout out to our friend at DX and the Field CTO Justin just released a guide on AI assisted coding, like prompt techniques. I had a chance to review the draft before it was published, and it's an amazing guide. I learned a ton, so I highly recommend the audience, and you, Ryan, and send it to you.
Sure.
But there is a lot of cool stuff in this guide. I highly recommend to read it. Ryan, before we end, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Look me up on LinkedIn. I'm in the Northeast, out in the Philadelphia area. Yeah, come find me. I will talk about this forever.
Amazing. Ryan, thanks a lot for coming on the show. It was a great contribution. Thank you.
No, this is a blast. Thanks.